So the Greens are on the march, no question. They have 210,000 members, more than a threefold increase. A friend of mine who's the chair of the Green Party in a borough of London says that they now get like 50 people at their meetings. Back in September, they got like four. So it's really sort of streaking ahead. The Greens are up to 20% in opinion polls. Your party is registering 1%. Uh, the Greens recently won their first by-election ever in Manchester. They have a high-profile leader in Zach Polanski, who was initially given a bit of a free ride by the media, but now coming under some amount of criticism. Whether it's fair or not is another matter. You see headlines in papers like Novara Media, which has become really a house organ for the Green Party. Quote, "The Greens are Britain's anti-war party now." So things are definitely on the up for the Greens. The question tonight is, how should socialists respond? Large numbers of people are joining. Probably some people on this call have already. I'm not joining, but let's talk about it. So, in my few minutes, I'm going to kick off with two questions. Uh, First, is there a Green Party road to socialism? That's the first question. And the second, how can socialists, that is, socialists outside the Green Party, work with the Greens? Some of the sects simply attack the Greens, say socialists should not work with them because it will inevitably result in abandoning independent working class politics. They really sort of dramatically overemphasize the strengths of socialists. They think socialists alone can win socialism. And they are afraid actually of sort of mucking it up in the class struggle. So the first question is really a takeoff on the question that of a rather well-known document to old-time lefties here, the Britain's Road to Socialism, the political program of the Communist Party of Britain that was first published in 1951, and it's gone through almost 10 editions. So is there a Green Party road to socialism? And I wanted to suggest that it's not, because the Green Party is not a socialist party. Now, its character is somewhat in flux, and it's going to be quite interesting to watch as a political phenomenon that a party gets 150,000 new members. Is that going to change the character of the Green Party? In coming months, and perhaps as early as this weekend at their GP online conference, maybe there'll be starting to be a struggle for power inside the Green Party. And I just wanted to emphasize one point. The fact that the Green Party is not a socialist party isn't not mine is not in my mind determinative to win over Green Party supporters. You can't just sort of walk in front of a Green Party meeting and saying conference, "You're not a socialist party." That's not the way people get won over. Of course, you need to have a program, but to think that to sort of say you're not socialist is going to win over the Greens, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. Now, what Tony Benn once said about the Labour Party is also true about the Greens. The Greens are not a socialist party, though there are socialists in it, and I know some number of them. Now, why? Well, first of all, they're not following a socialist economic program. They're not talking about putting the working class in power. Recent speeches by Polanski, and I just read one today actually. He spoke about the three pillars of economic strategy for the Greens. One, cap rents. Two, nationalize the water industry. Three, slash energy bills. Well, of course, those are all good things. Any socialist would be in favor of those, but that's a far, far way from being socialist. Simply say cap your rents or nationalize the water industry. You see, the problem is they have these sort of decent slogans, but they're not connected to any kind of reformist demands, to any kind of bigger picture of how we, in fact, might get to socialism. Now, I'll leave it to others to say why they think the Green Party is socialist or is not socialist, or how the Green Party has acted in office. Have they, acted like socialists when they've controlled the council in Bristol or in Brighton? Um, Now, on the road to socialism, a socialist party must be a democratic party. That's a huge problem in your party, of which I'm a member, but let's not go there. It may come in during the discussion. But it's very clear to me, as a person who was a member and had quite a lot of dealings with the Green Party, that the Green Party is not a democratic party. Here's just three examples. First, there's very little member engagement. When I was elected the chair of the Sheffield Green Party back in 2019, less than 15% of the members voted. The same Green Party member in Sheffield has controlled the elections for over 20 years. When I said back in 2019, after I joined the party, I want to maybe think about being a councillor candidate for the Greens, he went simply ballistic and personally blocked me. And over this whole process, I was elected. Within 3 weeks, I was suspended from the party. I did almost nothing. I chaired one meeting, just sort of, I wasn't doing much. I was sort of getting ready. I didn't really want the job, but I didn't drop out. So it was a really terrible experience in my life to be like have 48 hours of nonstop attacks on me in emails. As my partner at the time said, that kind of stuff drives people to suicide. And I had to get psychological counseling for the attacks on me when I'd done almost essentially nothing. Uh, so then party policy on democracy is not made by those who is made by those who have the time and the money to attend in-party conferences, in-person conferences, sorry. It's not delegates, which is much more democratic and representative of whole party membership. No, no surprise then that at the August 2016 conference, which will be held, it was going to be held in a city in the north. It's now going to be moved to Brighton, which is sort of a Green Party base. And within the Green Party, for example, and I've written quite a lot about this, its Standing Orders Committee is a body unto itself. I mean, it really is incredibly undemocratic. The party's disciplinary proceedings, especially so-called no-fault suspensions, are used to punish political opponents. People get an email, you're out of the party. It can last sometimes for 3 years against people. That's not democracy. That's not due process. Just sort of say pack you away for 3 years. It's really bad. Another huge problem is that the Green Party focuses almost exclusively on electoralism. There's very little non-electoral campaigning done now by the Green Party. It's all about electing a certain person. There's really no base building. For example, the Green Party, which is getting much bigger in Norwich, where I now lived here for 2 years, there's almost they're totally absent, say, from the Norwich Palestine Solidarity Campaign. It's just not, oh, well, that doesn't get votes for the Green Party, so we don't sort of participate in that. So there's a whole number of problems. Other people can sketch them out at length. I just like to look at a second question about working with the Greens. Because I think, in fact, a socialist can win over numbers of people in the Green Party by campaigning together for them. Not, I mean, your party's talking about electoral pacts and all this kind of stuff. No, let's talk about campaigning and working together on issues to build the working class struggle for socialism. And I would suggest, for example, just one thing about this. People do know, I hope, that the Green Party has a policy of running candidates in all constituencies in England, Wales, and Scotland. They're running everywhere. Not Northern Ireland, but then the mainland parties don't run over there. But this is their approach. They ran against Corbyn, for example, in 2024. So the idea of these electoral pacts with the Green Party is really a misnomer. I think we should be talking about working together with Greens on campaigns such as the campaign for eco-socialism, to in fact start campaigning about climate change, about the environment, about the way capitalism in fact is so crushing of the climate, of the environment, etc. Let's work together with the Greens, not give up socialist principles, but can we reach some kind of a platform to campaign on eco-socialism, the struggle for the environment, or B, for example, why don't we work together with them uh, on the question of proportional representation voting as a democratic demand? Polanski's a big in favor of it. It won't. It will, in fact, actually benefit left parties. But let's start to work at really take this world, this campaign out there to the masses of people. For many people support it, and let's work with them. So I'll just stop there, with the except one two last comments. One, everybody's heard the explosion, the expression, beggars can't be choosers. The idea is that, okay, so the Green Party may not be great. Some of you lefties maybe, but what else is the alternative? The only alternative, I mean, your party is in very bad shape. I've just been reading the minutes of their meeting on Sunday. It's just so much baffle gab. And so people say, well, there's no, who else can we do? We, in fact, have to join the Greens. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. Socialists do not need to be beggars. If and I can understand people leaving your party, but that doesn't necessarily mean that therefore you should join the Green Party. Yeah, okay, thanks. Go for it.
Okay, I'm a Green Party member. I've been a Green Party member for 16 years. I won't take much time. I think the Green Party is a place in which socialists and all sorts of other people can to come together to support the Green Party as a vehicle for achieving particular things. It isn't a party that aims at a socialist revolution. That's obvious. It's in the Constitution. Well, it's not in the Constitution that we don't, but it's not in the Constitution we should. But that doesn't mean it isn't a place where socialists aren't welcome and can work. Alan, I'm sorry for the experiences you had with Sheffield. That's deplorable on the part of my fellow party members. And much of what you say critiquing the party, I entirely agree with.
How about we go to Alex Fox?
It feels like quite a pivotal moment for your party because a lot of people are sort of flocking to the the only real viable alternative, which is the Greens. But I believe and have said for a long time that the Green Party is not a socialist party. They've never really pretended to be a socialist party, to be fair to them. But you know, when you go through what most of all of us have gone through on this call with your party so far, you just naturally look elsewhere and you think, I've got this energy. You know, 800,000 people sort of answered the call that Corbyn put out, which is, I think, there's still something there. You know, if you've gathered the left so effectively, like not many other people can do. You know, I feel like, and I think we all feel like there's something that needs to happen from that. But I don't think the Greens are the solution. I think the solution is what we're seeing in other areas where we're getting all these left socialist groups to come together under another umbrella. You know, like the Left Lane launching as a sort of critical friend of your party, which I think will now be better as a critical friend of the socialist or the British left in general. But, you know, the Greens have a well-documented history of, you know, 50 million in cuts in Bristol at a local council level. Zach Polanski has said, you know, he's repeatedly sort of like rejected the idea of taking the Liverpool road, you know, no cuts budgets. He's always said we can't do that. The deputy guy, I always forget his name, sorry, but he's kind of, you know, give the same sort of austerity lines as lots of sort of politicians do, where they say, well, if we haven't got the money, we can't do it. You know, it's the same tired excuses as to why you should have a no cuts budget. And I just think while we've got the British left united in this way, it needs to put its eggs in the right basket, and the Green Party is just not that basket, unfortunately. I'd love to see the Green Party winning by elections and keeping reform and the like out and all that. I'll support that all day long. But when it comes to, you know, an actual socialist country, the Green Party are not going to get us there, unfortunately.
Okay, why doesn't Phil Smart come in?
Yeah, are the Greens socialist? Well, they're not traditional socialists. You've already made the point that there are definitely socialists within the Green Party. I am one of those. I'm really upset with the way that your party have behaved and are continuing to behave. The Green Party does look like a natural home for somebody like me. I'm neurodiverse, so I might fit in, but the trans liberation issue is definitely important to me. I think that, if we're not standing up for the most marginalized sector in society, there's something seriously wrong with us. So, yeah, lots of work to do, lots of places to try and think. And I would just like to find a home where somebody that's neurodiverse and challenging can actually fit in, because I don't seem to have a home anywhere, and just seem to be causing trouble almost everywhere I go. And it's really frustrating. And I'll shut up, but thank you anyway.
Okay. How about Andy Walker? You'll speak out.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I just wanted to kind of address the actual question posed by the meeting, which was how should socialists respond to the Green Party? Because that kind of infers that there's something to respond to, and I think there is. The Greens, I think at the last count, have got 220,000 members, which is an interesting development, to put it mildly. Clearly, there is something going on in British politics in terms of the fact that people are, to use your phrase, flocking to the Green Party. And I don't think the people who are flocking to the Green Party are dyed-in-the-wool right-wingers and Starmerites either. I think they're joining that organisation out of a desire to actually change things, and to probably change things in a direction that many of the people in this room would like to see things change. I think, and I'll put my cards on the table. I don't think the Green Party are a socialist party. Then again, neither is the Labour Party. And many of us in this room, I'm sure, one time or another, will have spent an inordinate amount of time in the Labour Party. And we often probably, when we have our dark nights of the soul now, thinking, what the hell did we stay involved for so long for? But I think, as a socialist, which is what I am, I look at the situation and I think, well, what's going on in politics at the moment? And, what do we do in terms of actually trying to change things? And I think we also have to be a little bit aware of, to be aware of not actually just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Just because an organisation isn't socialist doesn't mean to say that you can't work with it. I think you have to understand what's the direction of travel, who are the people involved, and what are we trying to do? Because when you talk, Alan, about winning people over to what exactly is a question that I would ask. Because at the end of the day, there's no doubt in my mind that many of the people who are joining the Green Party now are joining, as I said before, partly because they want to see, and I'd go as far as to say radical change. And obviously, listening to some of the people in this room, that those people are going to be disappointed who are seeking radical change if the party remains as it has been, and maybe as it potentially still is in certain areas at the moment. But I don't think you can have an influx of at least 160,000 people into the party in the recent period, and for that party not to change. Now, that's not to say that the party will not face massive challenges. Let's be honest about it. When Corbyn was in control of the Labour Party, it faced exactly the same challenges and didn't deal with them very well. And I think one of the tasks of the Green Party coming up is how it actually deals with that massive influx, and not just the influx of numbers, the views of people coming into the organisation. Because I hope that many of the people coming into that organisation will not just stand idly by and accept some of the anti-democratic goings-on that there has been in the organisation in the past. And I think, they need to be supported as far as that is concerned. And I think the key challenge that the Greens will face going forward, or one of them, will be how they build the organization, build the infrastructure, get its membership engagement sorted out, recruit organizers, and build that party infrastructure across the board. So, and I hear what people are saying when they say, "Oh, well, it's not socialist because it doesn't stand for the nationalisation of the commanding heights of the economy and all the rest of it." Neither does your party, by the way. Let's get that straight as well. So I think we have to think about, why do we intervene in politics? What are we trying to do? And where do we want to take things going forward? And I'll finish on this point, because, as I said before, I am a socialist. I've been a socialist since I was 15 years of age. I want to see a transformation of society. And while the Green Party may not, in terms of its constitution, stand for that, in terms of a movement that could coalesce around the Green Party, I think the jury has to be out, because none of us have got a crystal ball. I hoped it would be your party that would have coalesced into that, potential. But we've all got our different stories about your party, but that doesn't appear to be the case at the moment. So I think politics in flux at the moment. A lot of different things are going on. I don't think any of us can say with any degree of certainty how things are going to pan out. But I think, I'm infused by what's happening with the Green Party, and infused particularly by the numbers of young people coming into that organisation. Obviously, the key issue will be what happens and how do things develop. And, let's see.
But there are three things. I mean, firstly, I think that your party has been absolutely hopeless, to be honest. And all of the arguments and all of the sort of frustrations about this seems to be, for me, I decided I wouldn't join, and I didn't join, and I'm not going to, because I just can't see any points at the moment. What's the point? The second thing, for the Greens, to me, they're a left liberal group, okay, and I think that's what they do, and I guess for me, I'm quite happy with that. It might be completely, I don't know, completely sort of economically socialist, but it also is more. It's certainly. It's often more socialist than, say, the Labour Party, for example. So you've got to look like that as well. For me as well, I'm absolutely appalled with some of the anti-trans stuff involved with the LGBT stuff, particularly anti-trans. And I'm glad that the Greens are absolutely clear what they're going to involved. And for me, that's absolutely important, because I'm not going to vote for any party unless they be absolutely clear that they want to, will support trans rights. That's absolutely important. Okay, thanks.
Problem. There's a vacuum on the left in politics, especially in England, because of the collapse of our political system. And that collapse of our political system, which has its roots in the economy, but that collapse is affected by the Tory party, which is a victim of that collapse. It itself is in a state of, if you like, degeneration. And I think the Labour Party is too, but because they got such a massive majority in Parliament, we're not seeing that it is being literally rotted away before our eyes. And I think there's a space for a left, I'll call it a left populist party, to kind of match up against the right populist party, which is Reform. Now, by a left populist party, I mean a left Republican party, because there isn't a Republican party in England for all sorts of reasons, and I'll mention that in a minute, because we're in a situation where our political system is in serious crisis. There's a crisis of democracy, and it's to do with the degeneration of the post-war social contract, the social monarchy as we call it, from Thatcher to Blair to the 2007-8 financial crisis, from Brexit, so there's objective, and from the rise of English nationalism, which Reform and the new English fascism also reflects. That's all part of this process of degeneration. And the problem we have is that English socialism is being corrupted. I mean, we've been talking about socialism as if everybody agreed what it actually meant. Oh, yes, that we're all socialists, we're not socialists. But nobody really said what was meant by that. Or everybody can agree that we're socialists, but nobody really agrees with actually what it means. Because English socialism is corrupted by unionism, it's being corrupted by economism, it's being corrupted by labourism, and its support for the constitutional monarchy and the Crown in Parliament. And English socialism has forgotten its republican roots that go back to the Levellers and the Chartists and Marx and Tom Paine and all of those things. So if we have to get back to that republican roots of working class democracy. Democracy is important, but a lot of people, I'll finish on this point because I've had a fair crack at this, but democracy is important, but most of the people on the left think it's only important in your party. It's like as if your party could be a perfect democracy and we could all debate and discuss things. As if we didn't give a flying, I don't know what would be flying, about whether this country was democratic. This country is not democratic. And in the democracy we've got is disappearing down the plug. And nobody's really bothered about that on the left. All we want is our own little party that's all perfectly democratic. And of course, that's why people are pretty disillusioned with your party for that reason. Your party
Steve.
is not matching up to the objective conditions and what needs to be done.
So next is Anita.
Thanks, Alan. No, I do agree with Steve that it's quite difficult to separate out your party from the Green Party discussion we're having right now. I mean, we are having this discussion precisely because of the evolution of the your party into a kind of puddle on the floor. But I think actually Alex hit the nail on the head for me. Yeah, the Green Party is not a socialist party. It'll never ever be a socialist party. That's just not who they are. It's not a party that socialists can even look to do anything. And he hit the nail on the head with what's posed for the Green Party. Are they going to fight austerity? No. They made the cuts in Brighton. The question of whether they go down the road of Liverpool is what's posed really at the end of the day. As it happens, that was exactly what was posed for Corbyn, when he became leader in 2017. What did he do first thing he did when he came into power, when he took office, MacDonald and Corbyn wrote to all the councils and said, do not make an illegal budget, i.e. make the cuts that the Tories are asking for. And I think that's where the rot set in for the Corbyn. That was the end for the whole project, actually. And that is precisely what's going to happen to the Greens as well. It doesn't matter how many members you have. Corbyn had 500,000 members at his fingertips. I mean, experienced activist. But as soon as he said, we're not going to fight austerity in the councils, it meant that he kind of demobilized the whole membership, We just ended up voting for the party. And we lost that election. We lost the whole project. And we're left with nothing. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with the Green as well. The crisis for Britain, I mean, I think Steve alluded to that, it's incredibly deep. There is no room for social democracy. I mean, 2017, maybe, there might have been some room then. We're in a situation where there's absolutely no room for social democracy. The ruling class are they're not in a mood to grant a social democracy. They've kind of committed genocide in Gaza. They've overthrown the international order. They made huge sacrifices for their imperialist project, and they're failing. I think Zach Polanski has a choice. You either, if he doesn't get to number 10, or whoever gets into number 10, even if it's your party under Corbyn would get into number 10, the choice is, do you support the imperialist project, or do you fight that? How do we fight that? Well, we fight that by mobilizing and shifting the balance of power in our favor. That is what is actually at stake here. How do we shift the balance of forces in our favor? Corbyn's not going to do it. So who is going to do it? So I'm not completely convinced that, that there is nothing to be done here from your party. I think there's going to be an evolution. I think there are a whole lot of activists, especially in the trade union movement, who have been looking at your party, They didn't join, which is really, really good. So what it meant is, the kind of Corbyn taking people up the hill and down again has not caused the kind of demoralization that it might have. The potential is there to build a class fighting party. I genuinely believe that what we need is a leadership. And I think we messed up really badly at the conference. The fact that Mark Soroka was throwing himself into your party is something that the left should have just backed him immediately. He's the kind of leader who could have done that. The Green Party is somebody who, well, yeah, maybe, if you had an election alliances, they could do that with them, but that's all they're good for.
I'm going to start the way that increasingly I start on every contribution, which is to say we live in extremely volatile times. And because of that volatility, we are going to still have many, many twists and turns in the road before we can be in a position where we say, right, this is going to be the structure which is going to lead us to socialism, because your party, people are leaving in droves. And what I'm saying to them, I find I'm like a broken record, is stay in and change it until it's got a political program. It's not a fully formed party, which I agree with very strongly with Steve Freedom. So, the idea that the Greens can never be a socialist party is ludicrous. Something like 140, 150, maybe more thousand people, many of whom are probably amongst that 800,000 and are at least very left-leaning. Young people, socialists, have joined the Green Party. Of course, it can be changed. Yes, the Green Party has behaved appallingly in terms of internal democracy. Your party has too. And yet I'm telling people, stay in your party and fight. So I just think, the Greens might not exist in 3 or 4 years' time. Your party might not exist in 3 or 4 months' time. There will be other forms of struggle and organization that pop up. And yes, let's remember that when Lenin started the Russian Social Democratic Party before the turn of the century, it was dedicated to electoralism and to going into the Russian Duma. It was not avowedly a revolutionary socialist party at all. Things had to change, and Russia went through an extremely volatile period, and it emerged out of it into 1917 with a one-off opportunity, which it took, and then, in my view, squandered. But there you go.
Okay, John, I think you've had your go, if that's all right. Stephen Cowden.
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, thanks for organising this really interesting discussion, Alan. It's very important. I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, I think one of the most important, what are the key struggles concretely facing us at the moment? I think one of the most important key struggles is the struggle against the extreme right. I think that's absolutely crucial. Yeah. Now, if we're looking at that struggle, yeah, what have the extreme right done that's so effective? They've created a political space. Yeah. If you look at what the extreme right, it's not just reform. There are loosely organized groups like Raise the Colours. There are far-right, avowedly fascist parties, and there are electoral vehicles. Yeah. Now, I think we have to see, why have they been so successful? They've been so successful because they have created a new political space. Yeah. And I think we have to see our job as creating a left political space. Yeah. Now that space can incorporate people from the Greens. It can incorporate people from your party. It can even incorporate some people from the Labour Party. Pragmatically, in terms of the electoral struggle against reform, we should look for the most pragmatic vehicle against them. Yeah, that's likely to be the Greens. In terms of on-the-ground organisation, I think organisations like Stand Up to Racism are doing a valuable job, and in many places of the country, they're the only people organising locally against the extreme right. So I think we've got to think in terms of how do we create that left political space based on dialogue. One of the things that's absolutely crucial, I did go to a very valuable Your Party meeting where in Leamington Spa where I live, where they had about 60 people, lots of young people. This is before the factionalism started and put everyone off. One of the things that came out most from all these young people is they were demanding political education. Yeah. A lot of the consequence of the collapse of the left is people don't know about the history of the socialist movement, the kind of things people are talking about here, who Lenin was, who the Chartists are, all this kind of stuff. There's a huge swathe of people don't know any of that stuff. So I see the struggle against the extreme right, creating a left space, and also creating vehicles that can do political education based on a sort of a dialogical Paulo Freirean kind of approach as the key objectives we should have. Thanks very
Okay,
much.
thanks, Stephen. Valentina and Kieran.
Hi. Yeah. Okay. So I think the simplest way to characterize the Green Party is just they're social democrats. And I think it's easy for us socialists to sort of trick ourselves into thinking social democrats are just socialists, but slightly further along the political spectrum to the right, and we just need to pull them into the left. But I think they're closer to capitalists than they are to us. The role of social democrats throughout history is to take our anti-capitalist energy and temper it and water it down so it's amenable to the ruling class. They are not people to work with. I think, Alan, you were maybe getting at there, people we can talk to and we can pull them to the left. So I think that was the approach that I wanted to take in the Labour Party with Corbyn and with Momentum, who I think in hindsight I would also characterise as social democrats. And I think us socialists within the Labour Party were just used. We were chewed up and spat out. I was ready to give all my energy to them, and they just sent me out door knocking and then sent me home. And there was no attempt to kind of build any relationship with the working class or build any kind of working class movement. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say. That it's they may have a use. They may like Alex said, a green win is obviously better than a reform win, but they're not something for us to put our energy into and waste our resources on.
Hi there. I'm really glad to see this kind of discussion happening. I was involved last week in organising a different meeting of people from your party, people who see themselves as Marxists, on exactly this topic. We headed it not green eco-populism, but working class socialism. We had a similar kind of attendance. So I think that to see this discussion popping up in different places and hopefully we can find ways of unifying that is really good. I think there's a very fundamental question that's been touched on tonight, and it's a point where I would disagree with the last speaker. I don't think that Corbyn or Momentum are social democratic. I think they're left populist. And populism was created as an ideology very consciously by people like Chantal Mouffe in order to, at the end of the Euro-communism era, destroy socialism and destroy the concept of socialism and socialism being something that comes through a working class movement. That's what left populism is. Its program is radical democracy. In Islington, where I'm in your party, we've had a very interesting argument with the Islington Community Independents because they didn't want to put socialism and working class on the election leaflets. And it was the one thing that they really wanted to fight against. And so that then poses this question about what do we mean by socialism? So first thing I'd like to say is I don't think socialism is something we should talk about as if it's a moral obligation. It's necessary. The world is moving towards war, right? We are in an environment where the climate collapse, the economic position of ordinary working people, and the possibility of having a peaceful existence are totally threatened by the system of capitalism. There's only one alternative. When Rosa Luxemburg says socialism versus barbarism, that is true. And that means that I think we can't conciliate or blunt our edge when it comes to actually making that point, and making that point against the Greens. Now, what I think we ought to be doing with the Greens, like with the Labour Party, is we ought to be trying to split them. I think we ought to be trying to win people away from them. There's nothing wrong with somebody starting off in politics in the Greens, seeing themselves that as the vehicle for which they think is the best vehicle for change, but they're wrong. It's a mistake. And I think that what we ought to do is seek common action with them. So there's any opportunity to actually have real united front where we, for example, demonstrate together against the fascists or something like that, or support a strike, absolutely. But that's got nothing to do with political support to the Greens. And I don't think we should support a capitalist party. The Greens are not going to change their spots. That is an organization that is structured around support for capitalism. And even very recently, we've heard Zach Polanski coming on television and assuring the bourgeoisie that NATO is safe in his hands. That's the purpose of a capitalist party. We want to build it. We have to build, I think, try and find a way to build a different kind of party. And I'd just like to finish on the point about history. It's actually not true that because the Bolsheviks were involved in the Duma, that they weren't revolutionaries. In fact, in 1903, when the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks split, just before they split, they both voted for a resolution to say, we stand for the dictatorship of the proletariat. They were an avowedly revolutionary party. What I think we need to do in part here, and this has been referred to, is look back into history and look at the situations in the past where people have advocated mixing the banners, of having cross-class coalitions. That, I think, is a terrible mistake. Those people who talk about the new Popular Front in France should remember the Popular Front in France and the Popular Front in Spain in the 1930s did not defeat fascism.
Yes, yeah. So I'm a working class socialist. Now, the socialist thing is a loose term because I'm just working class. Okay, I'm a Green Party councillor, and I did a lot of work over for Hannah's campaign in Gorton and Denton. It locked on lots of doors. We have a little by-election here in Rosendale. I'm knocking on lots of doors here as well. I think this question of how should socialists respond to the Greens, just be a good socialist. Just do what you can. You don't have to join. You don't have to criticize either. I put a comment in the stream there about what Berkhold said when he says that all radicals on the left have dents in their helmets and some of them are from the enemy. You know, there's some comments here tonight that I can consider to be just kind of, just put that to one side. The enemy on the doorstep, I know, time and time again, is reform. Okay, that's who we're all up against. Everybody in here is up against reform, and we're going to spend a lot of time pissing about talking about the same stuff over and over and over again.
I've had a question for you, actually.
Okay, far away. What's your question?
Well, the question is, for example, if Labour has the best chance, it seems, to beat reform in a given constituency, would you support getting behind the Labour? I'm just trying to think this idea of fighting reform. Should we line up who's got necessarily or appears to have the best chance of winning?
We're not there yet, Alan. I was there in Gorton and Denton. I knocked on lots of doors. I met very disillusioned Labour people. They were fed up with Starmer. They were fed up with the Labour Party's left me. I voted for Blair in 97. I voted for Corbyn. I campaigned for Corbyn in his constituency at the last election as a Green councillor.
Right.
So, I'm saying is that I want the right people to win, but it's too early for that. It's too early to think that Zach is going to be all of a sudden, where's all his policies? Where's all his, he said this 5 years ago, he tried to blah, blah, blah. That's the problem with it already. And the right-wing media are going to pull him to bits the same way they did with Corbyn. On the doorstep, I hear people now saying, oh, I don't like your leader. I said, well, he's not on the ballot. It's just a local girl who's standing for a local borough council by-election. So they're already after him, you see. That's the problem. And what we're doing here tonight is fucking fighting each other again and coming up with these very intellectual, very structured comments. It's not necessary at the moment. Be a good socialist, do what you can, and support anybody who's up against reform. That's the scary bit. That's why we're all here.
Oh, okay.
That's the only reason why you should be here, to fight reform. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Interesting viewpoint.
Been a really interesting discussion, and I kind of want to pick up on a number of points that have already been made. The first thing is something I think it was Steve said, which is about reform. Reform. It's not so much, I don't think, that they've created a new political new political space, as that they've, with a great deal of dishonesty, but nonetheless have pretended that they're talking directly to the working class. And they've been able to do that and get an audience and get support because the working class has been completely abandoned by Social Democrats, abandoned by the Labour Party, and to be honest, in my opinion, abandoned by Corbyn's leadership of your party as well. Working class people see through deceptions and lies and fudges, and they see through hypocrisy, and they are sick and tired of being patronized and lied to, right? And that is the reason why they've flocked to reform in such numbers. And what we need to do is actually to ensure in all our conversations that we're talking to people honestly and directly about what can actually be done and how, and not pretending that there's space for a nice friendly social democratic party to sort people's problems out. There isn't, as I think Anita mentioned earlier. There is no way that the ruling class in Britain or across the first world will tolerate a genuine reformist party that undoes decades of austerity, that stands against imperialism. There's no space for that. And that's fundamentally the reason why Social Democrats have lost the ear of the working class, is because there is no space for their ideas. So they have to lie and they have to pretend. Now, there's many different reasons why we might join a party, right? Most of us, I'm sure, joined the Labour Party at some point or other during our lives. Why did we do that? Well, I'll tell you why I joined the Labour Party. It was because the organised working class were in there, because there was a form of democracy where there was accountability to the organised working class. It meant that you could have conversations, that you could build campaigns, and that you could organise and influence the Labour movement. Well, clearly that's not the case now with the Greens. It's never going to be the case with the Greens, because the Greens don't have an orientation to the organised working class. Another reason you might join a party is because you think that there's an opportunity around the key issues of the day to shift the balance and to pull apart the contradictions of kind of a social democracy. Now, can you do that in the Green Party? Well, it's less clear cut, but you know what? The Green Party are never going to oppose NATO unequivocally. The Green Party, in practice, are never going to reverse decades of austerity. That is not in their blood, in their DNA. And I mean, look at the history of Green parties around the world. They have never, when it's come to the crunch, they have never taken the right position on anything, actually. In Brighton, in Bristol, in Germany. Look at what happened in Germany with the German Green Party, the biggest warmongers of all. Right? When the pressure is applied, and of course, as you get closer and closer to being a major party, more and more pressures build up on you. They don't have that underlying orientation to the working class that would stop them from folding.
Yes, well, I'm an expelled member. I don't criticize the majority of the members who have no idea of what is going on at the top of the party. My picture of the Green Party at the moment is of a lovely, nice, blossoming apple with a worm at the core. And the worm at the core is the small group who control the various top committees. Unfortunately, the constitution of the Green Party was developed when it was very small, 5,000 to 10,000 members, and it's never been revised. So policy is made at the national conference by those who have the motivation and the money and the time to take part. This tends to be young people who very often have great enthusiasm, but very immature ideas. We don't have a system of sending delegates from branches. So there's many things that are wrong, but the majority of members of the Green Party have no idea as to what is going on at the top. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Eric. You know, I was in the Green Party. I've written a lot of articles about what's happening in the Green Party, and people really don't know what goes on there. Okay, Darren.
Yeah, it's been really interesting hearing all the contributions this evening. And there's certainly quite a lot to think about. Um, I think the point I would make is that, you know, that it's it's about capitalism. It's not about elections. That's how that's always been my political outlook. And capitalism is in a long-term crisis now. I think one of the other, I think a contributor did refer to the crash of 2008, and really ever since that recession, there has been no bounce back for working class people. There's no, there's no indication for anybody that things are going to improve, and I think that's why we've seen this massive flipping of the electoral structure from being a Labour Tory duopoly to all of a sudden the Greens and Reform leading in the polls, because clearly people are extremely dissatisfied with the state of things. And I think what obviously it means is that the parties are under extreme pressure to deliver results. And I think that is the important point to make, is that all of these parties, whether it's the Green Party, whether it's your party, are going to be massively stress tested for, in terms of actually trying to deliver something. And I think for your party, it has to be more than just an electoral party. It has to be a party that harnesses and that cultivates genuine working class struggle, genuine anti-capitalist struggle. And I think so too, the Green Party, I think, I think, the experience of Corbyn, and I think we can tell, I think we have to put this across to young people who join the Green Party. The experience of Corbyn, proved, demonstrated the huge barriers that are in the way of any reformist party, actually attempting to deliver something tangible and something long term in the way that parties did after World War II. And I think the world, those reforms, those social democratic reforms post World War II were only really possible because the Western capitalism felt so threatened by the Soviet Union encroaching further and further west, and marching into Hungary and into Czechoslovakia and all of those countries. And and obviously people had lived through depression and had seen, and the devastation of war, and were demanding better housing, better public services, and you had an alternative. Well, none of those things are there anymore. So there's going to be a massive, there's going to have to be a massive class struggle. Politicians can't really deliver that. And I think the person who spoke and said about political education is absolutely right. We have to actually explain what capitalism is, how it works, why it's in crisis. I think we have to get all of those ideas across, particularly to a younger generation. And I think it's not to me, it's not whether about the Greens are good or bad, or whether your party is good or bad. I think like we work with those parties, or we work inside those parties to try and push things as far as we can. But I think even as a your party member, I feel at some point, as a revolutionary, I would have to break with the your party bureaucracy, because they're not going to actually deliver that revolutionary change. And we have to work, we have to organise independently as working class socialists.
Mark James from Sheffield. I was a socialist in the Green Party for 5 years. I know where the bodies are buried. Not a chance in hell that it's even going to be a social democratic party. I'll leave it at that. And one of the reasons why is because the Greens, if you look at where in this city, which has a proud left-wing tradition, the Greens are very strong in the west of the city and the working class live in the east. The problem is your party occupy exactly the same sociological strata as the Greens. And the comrade who said that the Greens can never talk to the working class, the left don't talk to the working class. The left have completely disengaged themselves from working class people. And I'll give you two examples. One, we went to see a relative who was sadly passing away in a pit village in West Yorkshire near Wakefield. That pit village, which 40 odd years ago was central to the miners' strike, was festooned in Union Jacks. And there is not a left-wing voice in those pit villages in the former coalfield communities. Everyone's in Islington, everyone's in West Sheffield, everyone's in East Manchester or Norwich, but they ain't out there in the pit villages where a lot of our left-wing base and our fight from a generation ago were. We're nowhere near it. And that's why your party is disintegrated, because we haven't got a working class base sociologically at all. And that is the problem that we face. Now, I've got no easy answer to that. The other example I'll give is, for my sins, I'm a season ticket holder at Bramall Lane. I'm a Sheffield United fan. No one on the radical left, yes, I saw that. No one on the radical left, I'm not a Wednesday fan, no one on the radical left knows how to speak to the 30,000 who go to Bramall Lane every fortnight. No one knows how to do it. The language that we use is so exclusionary to working class people that we have forgotten where our roots lie. And until we face that, it's not about policy. It's not about my transitional program is better than yours. It's not how many copies of socialist work you sell on the campus at Sheffield Uni. That's the easy bit. The hard bit is a turn to class, and it's not merely political. It's going to have to be sociological and geographical. And comrades, we have failed. I worked in the coalfield communities as a teacher for 35 years. The thing about reform is that 35 years ago in Bolsover, Dennis Skinner, I remember a comrade from the Labour Party saying, it's coming. It's coming here. So if you look at the so-called Red Wall constituencies that collapsed either to the Tories and may well collapse to Reform next time round, these were very, very working class constituencies. No one has been near them for 30 odd years. Everyone has forgotten how to speak to them. And then we go and talk about Lenin and the Bolsheviks 100 years ago. Frankly, this is bollocks. And the thing is that we have got to be really truthful with ourselves and ask ourselves, where do we live? Who are we talking to? Who our mates are? And are we just going round in circles? And I cannot say I've got the answers to that, because I live in the west of Sheffield and it's very nice and green here, and I've got the Peak District on my boundary.
Okay, thank you for that great intervention. Mark's a good friend of mine. Okay, Carol Taylor, go next.
What the last speaker is absolutely right. In Newcastle, in Ashington, where I used to live with my partner in the northeast of England, Andy shared a really interesting poll. It's going to go completely reform. And that is really, really worrying. And I absolutely agree with the previous speaker. Mark is absolutely right, which is why we need someone's mentioned a left populism being Corbyn. No, it isn't. So there is a space there for left populism. We've got to start talking to these people. We have to. Otherwise, the whole of the area in the northeast around Newcastle is going to be reform in these local elections, and I guess in the general elections as well.
Thanks, Carol. That's one of the reasons we're trying. It's a difficult issue to solve in a publication, but we definitely want a publication to have a newspaper, an online newspaper. We're not going to be selling it, that is accessible to people. And I think one of the successes of the left lane is that I really work very hard to try and make it accessible. What we're going to be doing in the left lane under new collective management is having more sessions like this. But we really want to sort of get this going more. It's been, I think, hopefully people thought it's a lively discussion to try and raise these political questions. Yeah, we're going to talk about economic issues, of course, but political questions, well, I think we want to get back onto what, if your party crashes out, it may happen fairly soon. We really have to, like, one of the purposes of this publication is to say, okay, so what went wrong? And not sort of all get completely pessimistic. Oh, well, capitalism's too strong. We can't do anything, blah, blah, blah. To have a really good, ongoing debate in the pages of the left lane as to what happened, what went wrong.